These are truly wonderful times to be alive. There is such a shift between the wheat and the tares going on right now. It's truly becoming easier to see and discern the difference between who is for Yah and who is just blinded by religion. Those who are living in truth are turning to our Father in these last days and declaring that they choose to serve Him and to be His set apart people. And it's truly a wonderful thing to see. Now, as many of us are turning to Yah, the challenge comes from removing ourselves from our old habits and traditions that we once were so conditioned to just blindly accept. As we grow, we start reviewing all of our actions and what we take part in. We enter into a process of evaluation to determine to see if something is right for us or if it is something that should be discarded. For the wheat, it should be easy to recognize holidays like Christmas and Easter and why we don't celebrate them. But I know many people still wonder about this coming holiday of Thanksgiving. This day is such an irrelevant day, and for the most part, people just feel like it's a time about getting together with the family and eating a big meal. But there is a lot more to it than this. Fortunately for many of us, we just celebrated Sukkot weeks ago, and so we had our feast and we had our big meals. For my family and I, our Sukkot this year was a blessing. But yeah, many of us, we are just so conditioned by these traditions that we don't think too hard about it, but we should. I've covered this topic many years ago, but I wanted to make sure I address this right now for anyone new to the channel or has newly woken up, in case you did not understand this. This video is made for the Kodashim. The true believers in Yahusha have always been, throughout history, what we know as the Kodashim, the set-apart ones. True believers have been set apart and called out from the ways of this world and have made their lives centered around Yahuwah and His will, His ways, and His desires. We do not follow the world and what it does, but we have found that living during these times are so dangerous because for generations the masses have been asleep. Since generations back, for many of us starting back from our grandparents or our great-grandparents, we have been brought up in a way of being exactly opposite of what this faith in Messiah requires. Though these generations have been brought up in the church and were all about their religion within the walls of the church, they did not actually practice the faith found based upon the scriptures that should be the basis of their belief. And though they should have been Kodashim, set apart ones, they were more about being followers of the world who were Christians. There was no difference between them and the rest of the unbelievers besides their belief in Jesus. But that was it. They lived the same, they did the same things, celebrated the same holidays, engaged in the world the same way, had the same worldly goals, brought the children up in the same worldly ways. And over time, as we went through our different generations, the majority of us have been placed under severe indoctrination that has originated from multiple sources. We have gone to schools to receive education, which are just actually indoctrination camps that are just about building and enforcing the indoctrination that was given to our parents before us. We have gone to the churches who have, as a majority, forsaken the word of Yah for a social gospel that is more about bringing about a kingdom of men rather than the kingdom of Yah. We have been under the mind control and influence of our entertainment from music, television, movies, and sports, and now social media, where those who want to guide us don't have to be grounded in truth, but grounded in a foundation of wealth or influence. And all we see in the mainstream is just another leg of that influence that they desire to spread upon us. And of course, we have the indoctrination of our family and our friends. We have been brought up under family who have made their ways our foundation. And if we challenge them or try to speak against them, we are met with hostility and we're made their enemies. And so now, as we that desire to be true believers, set apart ones, we find that the task of setting ourselves apart can be quite complex. And we find that as we engage in this activity and we draw nearer to Yah, we find out how far we were indoctrinated and stuck in their matrix. We find the longer the list of the ways and traditions that we must set ourselves apart from. And the topic of this video is just another check on that list that I, as a believer in Yahusha the Messiah, one who is a child of Israel, have been led to set myself and my family apart from. For those that truly understand that the time of Christmas is probably the most evil time of the year, a time where a majority of the people in this world worship the son of Satan through his paganized doctrine spread through the millennia. For those that have set themselves apart from the pagan holiday of Easter, which is all about the celebration of the fertility and moon goddess, for those in America and many other places around the world, we wonder about the next big day of celebration in this country, which is the holiday of Thanksgiving. Is it pagan? Should believers celebrate and participate? It is a question that needs to be answered and covered, because while this day is not merely as evil as the celebration of Christmas or Easter, it is not just a simple holiday based on mere thanks. It is another religious holiday that has been made secular, and it is something that should be understood by all believers and those who desire to be a set apart one. We will discuss the history of Thanksgiving and its religious influence. Let's begin. Okay, so let me first start with the foundation of understanding here. Let's be clear that this video is not for unbelievers. If you are not a believer in Yahusha, whom the world has called Jesus, if you are not a believer in him and you are just looking for some controversy or some conspiracy, this video is not for you. I'm not here to talk about pilgrims and tickle your ears with nonsense. This video is for those that believe in Messiah and desire to follow him and prepare themselves for him. In order to understand this subject, as well as any other subject that goes along with not following the traditions of men, you must start with understanding the culture of the Hebrews. If we are to understand our faith, we must understand it from the context of understanding and being Israel. The children of Israel, the Hebrews, are the only nation that Yahuwah chose and called out to be his. He made Israel a set-apart nation. And he said to Israel when he took them out of bondage in Egypt, "And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel." Exodus chapter 19, verse 6. You see, maybe this is not clear because understanding can often be lost in translation. But to be holy is to be set apart. When he says holy, it means set apart. He wants Israel to be a set apart nation. They were not to follow and do the same things as the other nations did. They were not to worship Yah the same way the other nations worship their other gods. Like he says in Jeremiah 10, "Thus says Yahuwah, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them." Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2. This was the culture and the ways of the Hebrews. And if you do not understand this, it often can be a breaking point of our faith. Christians today declare following this as being legalistic, and it's very foolish because they often don't even know what that word means. When people say that this is legalistic, ask them to clarify with more understanding besides just using that word. Because often you'll find that people that say this are actually saying they don't believe they have rules because their belief in Jesus sets them free from it. But Yahusha did not do this, and he did not create lawlessness. That is why it's important to know who it is that you're following. Anyways, the point that I'm making is that the culture of the Hebrews is to be set apart from the other nations. As Peter said, "But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people, that you should show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light." 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. We are a set-apart nation, and the reason we are a peculiar people is because we don't do the same as everyone else. But this has been lost, and the majority of people who claim to follow our faith are not very peculiar at all. They follow the same traditions as the rest of the world. The only difference is that they include Jesus in it. The point being made is that we are set apart for a reason. And for years, as I have followed Yah and removing my family from the pagan holidays like Christmas and Easter, I would avoid this topic of Thanksgiving because it was honestly just easier for me to ignore. We were so different from everyone with everything else. I tried to lighten the load for my family because all they really liked to do was eat a lot of food and have family all together. But over the years, Yah had separated us from it without us even knowing and realizing it. And then he showed me he had his own feast that we could do these family traditions with that are actually all about him. And being that my family desires to be set apart, we should strive to make the days that Yah has set apart more of our traditions rather than following the ways of Babylon, because these people are worshiping and celebrating other gods, and we should not participate and give anything to that energy. So as he pressed his understanding on me, I began to look more into the origins of Thanksgiving because I realized that my understanding was based off of indoctrination. Because I never heard gods being mentioned in the holiday, I just left it alone as a day of thanks. But it's not that simple, so we must understand it. So what is Thanksgiving? According to the Britannica, Thanksgiving Day is an annual national holiday in the United States and Canada celebrating the harvest and other blessings of the past year. Americans generally believe that their Thanksgiving is modeled on a 1621 harvest feast shared by the English colonists, Pilgrims of Plymouth, and the Wampanoag people. This American holiday is rich in legend and symbolism. We were taught in school that this story of Thanksgiving is that the Pilgrims sat together with Native Americans to share a meal and thank them for helping with a successful first harvest.
Hello, Englishman. I am Squatto. Perhaps we should strike a treaty between our peoples.
Good idea.
And that's why many of us feel that we are partaking in. But the whole truth of that story is not quite as nice. Using this article from New York Times, Everything You Learned About Thanksgiving is Wrong, we can get more understanding of its history. According to the article, the Mayflower did, in fact, bring pilgrims to North America from England, which they colonized and renamed Plymouth, Massachusetts. In 1621, those pilgrims celebrated a successful harvest with a 3-day gathering that was attended by members of the Wampanoag tribe. And again, this is what we all think we are celebrating when we celebrate Thanksgiving. It wasn't until the 1830s that this event was called the first Thanksgiving by New Englanders, as this is how they wanted to view the day. But when you add more history to it, it can definitely show why you would want to be separated from it.
American ideas about the frontier are probably sugar-coated. We want to ignore the ugly side of what was really going on. The vast majority of American Indian nations were forcibly removed from their original homelands.
It is said that the first Thanksgiving stemmed from the massacre of Pequot people in 1637, culmination of the Pequot War.
I remember about the massacre through my grandmother. She always talked about it as if it happened yesterday.
When you think about the history of the United States, there are a few key dates that really made a difference, where the way events were before really shifted, and one of those dates was in 1637. The English and their Indian allies attacked a fort at Mystic, Connecticut.
The massacre at Mystic Fort did change relationships between the colonists and the Indians forever.
It set the form for the taking of Indian land, and the process is repeated across the country.
The massacre at Mystic was the first time English people engaged in the wholesale slaughter of Native Americans, but it certainly would not be the last. May 26, 1637 was a day that changed everything in the land that would become America.
As the Puritans of Massachusetts Bay spread further into Connecticut, they came into increasing conflict with the Pequots, a tribe centered on the Thames River in southeastern Connecticut. By the spring of 1637, 13 English colonists and traders had been killed by the Pequot, and Massachusetts Bay Governor John Endicott organized a large military force to punish the local tribe. On April 23rd, 200 Pequot warriors responded defiantly to the colonial mobilization by attacking a Connecticut settlement, killing 6 men and 3 women and taking 2 girls away. On May 26, 1637, 2 hours before dawn, the Puritans and their native allies marched on the Pequot village at Mystic, slaughtering all but a handful of its inhabitants. On June 5th, Captain Mason attacked another Pequot village, this one near present-day Stonington, and again, the native inhabitants were defeated and massacred. On July 28th, a third attack and massacre occurred near present-day Fairfield, and the Pequot War came to an end. Most of the surviving Pequot were sold into slavery, though a handful escaped to join other southern New England tribes. The massacre of Pequot was the killing of 500 Native American women, men, and children. They tell the story of the natives eating with the pilgrims, but they leave out that the ones that did not agree to the colonizing of their land, they were killed. This holiday is dressed up around a meal between 2 different tribes of people giving thanks. But what is not mentioned in it is that the people being celebrated were colonizers who had no regard to life that was not their own. They killed and pillaged in order to establish themselves. This conduct will be severely spoken against today, but yet we use them as a reason to celebrate a holiday. It is said that the Pilgrims extended an invitation to the Native Americans for helping them reap the harvest, but the actual truth of how they all ended up feasting together is not actually known. We know a Disney type of story of it. The English written record does not mention an invitation, and a Wampanoag oral tradition does not seem to reach back to this event. What we know is the celebration they had was an exceptional cross-cultural moment with food, games, and prayer. and we will start to focus on that, the prayer aspect. The New England colonists were accustomed to regularly celebrating Thanksgivings, days of prayer, thanking God. Now, please understand, this is just a generic title. We do not know the name of the God that they were actually giving thanks to, but let's continue. The Thanksgiving celebration was days of prayer, thanking God for blessings, such as military victory or the end of a drought, etc. This is a day about prayer, which is why it's named Thanksgiving. People are thanking God for what he is giving. What we know as Thanksgiving is more of a tradition that does not come from Yah, but more of a tradition that stems from the Church of England. It is time that many believers today understand that so much of their faith in Yah has been tainted by not only the Roman Catholic Church, but also the Church of England. In the English tradition, days of Thanksgiving and special Thanksgiving religious services became important during the English Reformation in the reign of Henry VIII. Before the year 1536, there were 95 church holidays, plus 52 Sundays when people were required to attend church and forego work. Though the reforms in the Church of England that came in the year 1536 reduced the number of holidays in the religious calendar to 27, the Puritan Party and the Anglican Church wished to eliminate all church holidays apart from the weekly Lord's Day, which is what many view as the Christian Sabbath, which is on Sunday. And they included the Feast of Christmas and Easter. Special blessings viewed as coming from God called for days of Thanksgiving, which were observed through Christian church services and other gatherings. This was a day that the Church of England used to celebrate the God they served, and they thanked him. The way that it came in the United States originally was all about giving thanks for the harvest. But the idea of Thanksgiving is a real religious holiday. It is not secular. And though it is not a pagan festival like Christmas and Easter, being that it is religious, those who follow Yah must recognize this because this type of holiday is actually quite pagan. We know as Thanksgiving is a day of religious observance set apart to give thanks for the blessings of the past year, as well as an occasion for family reunions, big dinners, and festivities in the home. Like I just showed, they like to say that the origin of the holiday was about the festivals they had with the Native Americans in 1621. This type of celebration has been celebrated by pagans since the ancient times. The idea of a day to set apart to celebrate the completion of the harvest and to render homage to the spirit who caused the fruits and crops to grow is ancient and universal amongst pagans. The practice of designating a day of Thanksgiving for specific spiritual or secular benefits has been followed in many countries. Most countries celebrate a Thanksgiving Day in one form or another. In Australia, Thanksgiving is celebrated on the last Wednesday of November. In Brazil, the Thanksgiving celebration takes place on the fourth Thursday of November. This date is celebrated by many families of American origin in some Protestant Christian denominations. In Germany, the Harvest Thanksgiving Festival, forgive my pronunciation, Erntedankfest, is a popular German Christian festival on the first Sunday of October. The festival has a significant religious component, and many churches are decorated with autumn crops. Labor Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday in Japan. It takes place annually on November 23rd. The law establishing the holiday, which was adopted during the American occupation after World War II. They cite it as an occasion of commemorating labor and production and giving each other thanks. It has roots in the ancient Shinto harvest ceremony. In the United Kingdom, the Harvest Festival of Thanksgiving does not have an official date. However, it is traditionally held on or near the Sunday of the harvest moon that occurs closest to the autumnal equinox. If you research this, you will see that many countries partake in this type of religious day. This is not a secular day of eating and gathering with family. It is a religious day that has been used for millennia to thank their gods for the harvest. For instance, as we just spoke about the United Kingdom, Harvest Thanksgiving in Britain had pre-Christian roots. Basically, before Christianity came to England, the pagan Saxons would offer the first sheaf of barley, oats, or wheat to the fertility gods. When the harvest was finally collected, communities would come together for a harvest supper. When Christianity arrived in Britain, many of their pagan traditions remained, and it was just wrapped around the God of the Christians. What you are actually practicing is Harvest Thanksgiving. The pagans in Rome celebrated their Thanksgiving in early October. The holiday was dedicated to the goddess of the harvest, Ceres, and the holiday was called Cerealia. Cerealia was the major festival celebrated for the grain goddess, Ceres, in pagan Rome. Thanksgiving is in the guise of the pagan harvest festivals and can be traced right back to ancient Babylon and Ishtar, who is known as the goddess of fertility as well as vegetation. This is all paganism secularized and brought to us in ways that are unassuming and makes us feel that it's all about family and not about the worship of other gods, but it's highly incorrect. We have just been accustomed and attached to the ways of this world and how they celebrate their gods. We must be very intentional about our celebrations and how we give thanks to Yah. This day is not about Yahuwah, and I can tell you and show you why. If this was about Yahuwah and worshiping him, we would do it the way he has shown us. Yahuwah has already commanded 3 feasts, but because the world is Christian, we do things the way the Christian church does things rather than what Yahuwah has actually said in his word. Yahuwah has given 3 harvest feasts. The barley harvest, which we know as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. This is on the first full moon following the spring equinox. There is the wheat harvest that we know as Pentecost. This is 50 days from the Feast of the First Fruits. And there's the grape harvest, what we know as Sukkot, or Feast of Tabernacles, which is on the 15th day of the 7th month, which just passed. I have made videos covering these feasts if you have questions about them. These feasts are what we should be keeping. The point I'm making is that we have been taught so wrong and brought up in ways that have nothing to do with our Creator. The Bible is a complete book used for instruction and guidance. Israel had their own way, they have their own culture. Yahweh specifically taught them how he wants them to worship him. But we have been sold ways that are completely away from Yah and more aligned with the heathens. You may not be ready to understand his feast or even align yourself to them because it's a culture shock and a transition, though it is one of those things that definitely brings you closer to Yah. But whether you are ready to learn of his feast, you must ask yourself, why are you so aligned with the ways of this world more than you are with the ways of Yah? He has 3 feasts that are about worshiping him in truth, but we have been taught to ignore and not know anything about them, while we are taught to follow the ways of the colonizing pilgrims who massacred lands that did not belong to them. We are taught to partake in days of Thanksgiving where people are thanking all sorts of gods for what they have. Before I started with the understanding of Thanksgiving, I started with the understanding of being set apart, because this is what matters. If he wants us to be called out, set apart only to him, do you think that we do this when we are attaching ourselves to the ways of this world? It does not matter about our ignorance. As Yah is preparing us for him, he is unveiling truth and breaking down the web of lies that Satan has placed in front of us. We must take the word very seriously and apply it to our lives. Beware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the traditions of men, after the rudiments of this world, and not after Messiah. Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. As his set-apart nation, we must reject the traditions of men and be set apart from the ways of this world. I know these days are great to be around family, and it is something that's hard to break away from, especially if you have already been taking out Christmas and Easter from your ways already. This understanding is all about Yah's children coming out of Babylon and being set apart from the ways this world has created. And look, if you summarize this without even understanding the pagan aspects of Thanksgiving, we have been celebrating murderers and colonizers who removed people out of their land so that they could take it. This is the story in the history of the pilgrims. Now, above all that, pagans have long before celebrated their agricultural gods for their harvest. This day of Thanksgiving was set up and rooted in a celebration of the harvest. And just like the pilgrims prayed with the Native Americans, even though supposedly they worship different gods, when we celebrate Thanksgiving, we are setting this day apart as well and giving thanks and praying with the many different believers and religions in this country and around the world. You are partaking in worship of the many different religions around the world. This has nothing to do with Yah, even if we would like to say it does. The common thought or rebuttal people like to say is that I don't honor it as a holy day. To me, it's just a day of giving thanks for what God has provided. You know, this is very similar to what people say when they are justifying the celebration of Christmas and Easter. It is true that you may not be using it as a holy day, but please ask yourself, where did you get this day from? Did you come up with this day on your own? Did Yah tell you to celebrate this? No, you have been led and guided into the celebration by tradition. And regardless of how you look at it, you have been steered and swayed into doing this. We are just comfortable with it now, so it's easier to just ignore it rather than make changes to be truly set apart. This is a religious holiday with a religious spirit behind it. For years, my family just said that we are not celebrating with them and we're just giving thanks to Yah. But Yah wouldn't allow me to stand on that any longer. He has called me out and told me to stand separate and apart from this world. If we are to be a peculiar people, we shouldn't be doing things the way the world says to do them. Being set apart allows others to ask questions and wonder why, which can then help lead more people into the true faith of Yah. After a while, you don't even recognize that these days are here, though. The more you detach from this world, the more you don't even have a clue of what these people are doing. It truly brings freedom. It is time, though, that we separate from the ways of this world and be who Yahweh has made us to be. It is time to be the set-apart nation that Yah has called us out to be. This is not a subject that you just need to take my word on. This is a subject that I ask you to take up in prayer and do as Yah leads you. I'm not here to tell anyone what to do and how to do it, but I do believe that the truth must be given out so that everyone has a chance to be brought out of the false ways and mindsets that this world has indoctrinated us into. After you now have received this information, it's up to you to pray about it and ask Yah what He desires from you. I know for myself and my family, as we are preparing for Him and preparing for His coming kingdom, we are setting ourselves apart from the ways and the mindsets of this world, and we are being called out and separate. I will not worship and celebrate Yah the same way that the rest of the world celebrates their God. That's why they love using the title God, because none of us really know who it is that they're actually worshiping. In these last days, it is important that we worship Yahweh in spirit and in truth, and we break away from the traditions of men. These are our days to redeem. So let us stand in truth and fight the good fight of faith away from the influence of Satan. Stand strong in your faith and be the set-apart, peculiar people Yahweh has called us out to be. Because right now, you must be ready and know that the kingdom of Yahweh is truly at hand. Be ready for it and be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. Okay, thanks again for watching. If this has blessed you, please don't forget to like it and share it with others. If you have not already done so, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Yah willing, I upload every Friday. Also, please don't forget to follow this ministry on Facebook and Instagram, as well as on my website, truthunedited.com. Listen, I want to sincerely thank all those who pray, donate, and support this channel. Thank you sincerely for your support. You are greatly appreciated. Thank you for being a blessing and following Yah's call on your heart. These are absolutely trying times, and I'm thankful for your support. Be blessed. Okay, thanks again for watching, everyone. I love you all.